Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. We have Felix Chavez from Hutto ISD. He's one of the board members out there at Hutto, and so excited to have a conversation with him today. And before we get into today's conversation, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor. Ideal Impact is giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to public education in the form of a free gift. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. All right. Felix, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here, Gary.
Yes, very, very exciting. So every person we meet has something unique going on in their lives related to public education and different perspectives, seeing things from different lens, different experiences. So if you can, as we get started here, share a little bit about your background.
Sure. I've been a resident of Hutto in the Round Rock area for the last 25 years. I'm an insurance agent by trade, and this is my second term on the board. I'm on my fifth year, and I've always been a volunteer. My wife and I have graduated two daughters from Hutto ISD, and one's in college, one's in the workforce, and we also have a son who's in fourth grade. So the volunteering piece has always been instrumental by our family. We've always been involved, and I think that the next step for us and for me was to be a board member, and that's what we've done. So that's how we serve.
Very good, very good. And I understand being a board member is it can be a challenging role, right? You have those late evenings at the board meetings and a lot of stakeholders, if you will, pressure and that sort of thing. Um, Curious, what's happening right now in public ed that's kind of a top focus, if you will?
Well, I think the biggest thing, the elephant in the room, is the vouchers, and with our leadership at our state going in a different direction, it's always bothersome, and it's questionable as to who they're really trying to satisfy. That's my take on it. Is it big interest, or is it really educating the kids? Because in reality, we do need a lot of funding in public education today.
Yeah, funding is always a hot topic. It's always that give and take between the government and the districts and if you guys had some additional funding right now, if your district had additional funding right now, what do you think could make a big impact in your district?
Well, there's a lot of conversation about choice, right? And giving kids choice. And let me go through some of the choices. Some kids come to school because of athletics, and we have a chance to be able to really make an impact. Some kids come to school because of the arts, music, science, robotics. Some kids come because of the academic results and what they can achieve. But all of that takes funding, and with increases in inflationary issues, cost of adjustments with buildings and salaries, it's impossible for any business, let alone the school district, to operate at a labor cost of 80% across the state of Texas. If I was running my business in that fashion, I would never exist. No company would exist. So funding is huge. What can we do? First of all, let's take care of our teachers. Our teachers don't make enough money. That's why they leave our profession. Funding is huge for that sort of help in our district. But there's other programs that we can bring on too. I mean, for example, Hutto ISD is a school that has an incredible opportunity, but we don't have a mariachi band, a mariachi group. And those are groups that could provide scholarship opportunities for students. And that takes a little bit of funding. So that, just to name one in particular.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, definitely requires thinking outside the box. And so, what's a big focus out at Hutto ISD? What's a big focus right now? Because every district goes through different phases, if you will, of like different things they're focused on. What's kind of the main priority right now?
Well, it's always been the same thing, right? We want to be able to graduate students that can get out into universities, colleges, trade schools, and even the workforce. That's the number one goal that we have. But we want to be able to do it by empowering students to be able to dream big and to be able to select choices along with their families or moms and dads, select choices that are going to be the right avenue for them, right? So we want to encourage them and we want to be able to walk them through the path of being able to make those selections. And that takes work, that takes time, that takes getting to know a student, that takes our counselors and our teachers to really invest time in those kids. And that's the only way you really do that.
Makes sense. And um, obviously, there's a lot going on in public education. What are some things that you've learned, or let's say over the when we've gotten past the pandemic, right? And there's some, obviously changes that may or may not have happened after the pandemic. And what has been some of the lessons learned? It could be related to leadership, it could be related to financials, it could be related to anything. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about lessons learned over the past 12 to 24 months?
Well, COVID was a little bit over 24 months ago, right? So just coming out of that and going through that process of having kids at home, you learn that some kids can and some kids can't, right? So having a choice, having a selection, having options for kids and giving them that choice for kids that are a little bit more accelerated in the learning path and being able to adopt to learning virtually and in a system that kind of allows them to go a little faster, that works really well. But for a lot of other kids, they need an instructor in front of them and in a classroom setting. So I think that that's the big piece, is that we can't teach every child in the same way as we've always done in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense because everybody learns differently, and I know a lot of times people want to do things at a distance, distant learning, and that sort of thing. But there is something to be said for just being around. I know I think about my daughters. I have three daughters, and some one some of them, or one of them is more introverted. Another one likes to be around people, and then the youngest one, I don't know yet, but it's yeah, I imagine I could see how, and then you think about the parents, right? Every family is different with being able to stay home with their kids, or working, and so definitely adds a layer of complexity there. um okay, well, good. So it sounds like you'll have a lot of exciting things happening at Hutto. um what else? Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners, whether they be superintendents, board members, or people just interested in public education, that, maybe it's a mindset, or maybe it's a vision, or just a thought? What are your thoughts?
Well, two things. One is our teachers and our instructors at all our schools across Texas need to feel that we're working together with them, that they make a huge difference. And they're playing, unfortunately, right now, a big political game with that type of group of workers in Texas that is discouraging for them. So, us as board members, superintendents, leadership in districts, the one thing that we can do is go into our schools and thank our teachers, because conversation and small amounts of energy into them, because it's a lot of people in a district. I mean, Hutto ISD has over 1,500 employees. It's difficult for a board member to be able to touch every single employee, but we have to be the face out there along with our leadership of thanking our teachers and having some conversations about what's working and where can we improve a little bit more, and what would they like to see. Maybe they have incredible ideas. But number two, it's also looking at the current form that teachers are being rewarded in the teacher incentive allotment. The TIA is not a fair playing instrument yet across the board for every teacher, because you've got to be able to apply for it. You've got to be able to get it accepted. And not every single one of the fields or the career choices is in that being bonused out. And that's a huge incentive. So if we're changing these dynamics to be able to help teachers make more money and be rewarded for the results, let's do it across the board for everybody. So how does that work? I don't know. The Texas state government decided to bring this program on, and they've got to be able to refine it in a way that it works for every single teacher in Texas. And when we look at how many teachers we have in Texas and how many were given that allotment last year, it's not even 10%. It's ridiculous right now. So come on, we can do a better job. If we're serious about public education, which I think we are, as a state, then let's do it right. Let's reward teachers for the work that they're doing. If all they're going to get besides their salaries and their incomes right now, no more funding, but the TIA is the option, let's do it right then.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. And it's funny you mentioned teachers, and I have some friends that are teachers. I think we all do, and or know somebody that's a teacher, and it's interesting when you talk to them because sometimes it's pay, sometimes it's sometimes you hear administration versus the teachers, and there's a disconnect there. I mean, you hear a lot of stories about different things. What are some of the things that Hutto ISD is doing that's really, helping the teachers right now?
Well, there's a teacher apprentice programs that we have that Dr. Karen Malone has brought on to our district a few years ago that has been a funnel of being able to bring on new teachers into the field that has been very helpful. But it's also helping our current teachers that are at the school district, seeing fresh, new faces, excited about coming into the career. Because in most cases, these people have never taught before, and it's encouraging to be able to see a lot of new people coming into the profession, but being able to do it in a way that we've never taught before. So when the older teachers that have tenure see this opportunity and see how we're doing it, it's encouraging to them, saying, you know what, there's choice, there's always a choice. How we do that and how we figure that out is up to every school district.
Very nice. Well, good. So, what are your longer term aspirations? Just curious. So you've been on the board a while. You got to stay on the board for the as long as you can, or you got other visions in public education you want to pursue eventually. What's your future look like? If
Well, besides being a board member, a board of trustee member, I have a child who's also in fourth grade and still has time before he graduates. Like I said earlier, my wife and I are also parents to two older daughters that went K through 12 through Hutto ISD, and we were at every game, at every cheer practice, at everything, just like we are for our son. But I've also been very involved in helping the community. I am the vice chair for the Hutto Resource Center, which is a food pantry. I do a golf tournament for them every year. So all of those things just keep me very busy and grounded in my community. And I don't have any aspirations as to anything else right now except where I'm at. And I think that fulfills me and rewards me. And it allows us to be able to have a feeler for what's going on in our district and how can we be of help. I'm not here to make changes because a board member doesn't really do that in that dynamic, right? It takes a group of 7 board members with a superintendent to make a difference. I'm here to be able to hear what other board members and families in Hutto ISD have and concerns, and how can we do better? That's the number one thing. And I'm fortunate. When I got elected back 5 years ago in my first term, I came to a board that had seasoned veteran board members. And I can tell you that that makes a world of a difference. When you have a bunch of brand new board members, it takes time for them to have traction and to understand every facet of every decision that they make and to be able to appreciate some of the decisions that are tough to make. So for now, I'm content where I'm at because I'm really working with great teachers in the great district and in our community, volunteering where I can.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have your hands full. But it's great that you're so plugged into the community. If more people thought that way, I think it could, as a society, we can make a huge difference in our communities, just wanting to help
Yeah,
and look.
well, at the same time, as a business owner, I have a duty to my staff. I want to make sure that they have the best opportunity to go forward, and we have the same duty at Hutto ISD and to our community. Imagine if every student that graduated Hutto ISD was well position to be able to get into a university, a college, a trade school, where they could go on and make more income than their parents made and could settle into some great paths, right? In their careers and be able to make some great income. Those kids that now become our future are not, in the line of assistance from health services, from government services, from, food pantries. There are people now that can bring resources to the families that need help. And that's what we want. That's what we aspire to be. That's the goal, is to be able to get students to get out into the world and be successful.
Love it. No, absolutely. Well, this has been, I know we're running short on time here. This has been a great interview, and I really appreciate your time and sharing. Any last thoughts before we close out?
I will tell you, any parent that is hearing, or any superintendent that is on listening to our podcast, man, hug your teachers. Appreciate them. They are the person who makes a difference on a daily basis for the students that we have in our district. And if you're like Hutto ISD or any similarity to Hutto ISD, we've got 10,500, 600 kids, and one teacher can make a huge impact on one student that might need a good teacher with a good attitude out there. So hug on them, appreciate them, and encourage them.
That's so true. I think all of us could think of that one teacher in our life that made a huge difference just looking
Yeah.
back. So thankful for you sharing that and for the interview today. Before we close out, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor one last time, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to public education in the form of a free gift. So if your district needs unrestricted funds for teacher salaries or whatever the district needs, reach out to Ideal Impact. And for those that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.